Merhaba. That's the only Turkish I know, apart from baklava and halva. But mostly food-related words. But thank you for joining me on our journey of how to implement buzzword. Replace that variable with any buzzword you've heard of over the last months, years, minutes, in some cases, because I'm sure we've heard a few buzzwords here at the conference, but get it over and done with. That's me, same person. The hair is a little bit longer. I'm Tim. I was going to wear the same top, but I've been spending 3 days in Istanbul, and the food here is too good, so it might have been a stretch trying to wear that shirt. But you're not here to know about me, really. You're here to learn about Hip Company. Hip Company is this magical company everybody wants to work for. They're great. You know, they're big, they're amazing, they're doing the hippest things. Just as a disclaimer, Hip Company is completely fictitious. I don't know what I'm talking about. It came out of my mind. Any relation you might think of Hip Company to, in a part or full, to a company you've previously worked for or never worked for before or heard about, has no relation. It's all completely fictitious. Hip Company is hip because they're the kind of company that has a ping pong table in their conference. They want their engineers to be fun, happy. You know, they want to be a really hip company. They've got a ping pong table in the meeting room. We know it's a meeting room because there is a whiteboard over there, but it's cool because we can use the whiteboard for the ping pong table tournament to keep all the scores. The fact that it's in a meeting room, it's okay because you can fold the ping pong table away, but Hip Company is a company that has a ping pong table for its engineers because that's what engineers do. They play ping pong table. They also have a Nintendo Switch so that when the ping pong table is being used, the other engineers can Mario Kart. During the pandemic, I became a champion at Mario Kart. My character is Donkey Kong. So much so that when I went back to my company, I was the Mario Kart champion. I mean, no, it's all fictitious. I've never known a company to have a Switch there. And they also do Friday drinks. I mean, obviously, they all do Friday drinks. I'm from the Netherlands. Well, I live in the Netherlands. I'm actually from Malta, hence the weird accent. They do Friday drinks. And in the Netherlands, we even have a word specifically for Friday drinks after work, which is borrelen. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it, but it's borrelen. It's so ingrained in the Hip Company culture that, you know, they have that mini fridge with usually cheap beer because it's paid for by the company, but it's hip, so we have drinks on a Friday and everybody can have a drink after working hard, because at Hip Company, we do work hard. Everybody you can see there, everybody's surrounded on their laptops, or rather their phones, but we're working hard. They're very hard-working people at Hip Company, but we don't only work hard, we also play hard. You know, we work hard and play hard. They're the new kids in town. They're the best kids in town. That's what Hip Company is all about. Working hard and playing harder. They are definitely playing harder over there. Maybe a little bit too hard, especially that guy. He's a bit playing too hard. But we're hip, we're cool. You know, everybody wants to be at Hip Company. Although maybe the playing hard is getting in the way, and it's not feeling as hip anymore. There's a monolithic application. We don't like monoliths. We don't do monoliths. What's this? It's not hip. Bug fixes are taking forever to deploy. Nobody really talks to anybody. There's a development team and there's an ops team. It's not really hip to do this. We deploy every quarter. What's going on? It's not hip. So Hip management has decided, okay, we need to be hip. We're a Hip Company, we need to be hip. They go in, they put away the ping pong table. They're not going to use the whiteboard because that's where the scores are. So they take out the flip chart with the post-it notes. Obviously, that's how you use a flip chart. And And you know it's serious because the ThinkPads come out. The Lenovo ThinkPads come out. HIP management has the Lenovo ThinkPads, and they come out. And they're asking the big three consultancies, okay, how can we become HIP? What are we doing wrong? We've got this monolith application. Engineers are telling us it's not HIP. What can we do for the anti-monolith? We need to use an anti-monolith. So what are all the companies, what are all the cool companies doing? Well, anti-monolith, we're going to be using microservices, obviously. That's the buzzword of the day. That's what we want to be using. We want to be using microservices because everybody's going to be using a microservice. You know, yeah. We'll still call it microservice. It's a microservice. The company is going to be using microservices, and from now onwards, that monolith is becoming a microservice. And a microservice is a 3-in-1 buzzword. Because if you're using microservices, then obviously you're using containers. I mean, who's not using a container nowadays? With VMs, why are we using VMs to store our containers on? But well, who's using containers? And obviously, if you're going to be using containers, you're going to hit the big buzzword. Yeah, we're doing Kubernetes. Come on, who doesn't love a Kubernetes? Yeah? Let's do the Kubernetes. Okay, there it is. We're going to take that monolith. Oh yeah, we've got the DB, we've got a database. Forget about the database. We'll do the monolith. Let's focus on the monolith. There it is. We're going to be using microservices. We're going to go from monolith to hip microservices. We're so hip, we want to be even hipper. We're going to take that microservice and we're going to make it even microservicery. We're going to have microservices for everyone. You get a microservice, you get a microservice, you get a everybody's going to get a microservice. Look at all of those microservices. Aren't they cool? Oh, it's okay. It's a mishmash, but we're using microservices. Everything's talking to everything. There's that one microservice there in the middle, which is probably called common, which nobody knows how to use and nobody knows what to touch because, you know, touching common means breaking everything, but it's all connected to that one DB which we forgot about. But we're using microservices. We're going to put it all on Kubernetes. The ops people are now going to have to figure out Kubernetes. It's okay. Everybody's going to get a ticket to KubeCon because the developers have no clue what's going on. Why? Who? Microservices, Kubernetes. The operations team, which actually was created because some guy created an S3 bucket in Amazon once, now needs to do a Kubernetes. What's Kubernetes? Why am I doing Kubernetes? What are we doing? Microservice. Why am I? Who wants to touch common? Nobody. The deployment breaks every time we touch it. I'm not touching it. He's getting the blame. The other one's getting, that microservices guy is definitely getting the blame. No one is talking to anybody. HIP company is not feeling as hip. So HIP management gets back into the room, get into the meeting place, they close the laptop, they close the ping pong table, put it away. Again, do not touch the whiteboard. Those are where the scores are. Gets the flip chart out, post-it notes as well again. The ThinkPad is out, and we're calling the big three. Okay, how do we fix this? We've done the monolith, we've taken it away. We're not doing microservices anymore, but everything still breaking. Why aren't we hip? We want our developers to be talking to our operations people. We need the devs and the ops to be talking. How can we get the devs and ops talking? Obviously, where are we? We're doing DevOps. Yeah, everybody's a dev. Stop. Okay, you're not a front end. You're not. Everybody's a DevOps engineer, whatever that means. But we're all DevOps engineers. We've done microservices, so obviously we have to do DevOps engineers. And DevOps, just like microservices, is a 3-in-1 buzzword. Because if you're doing DevOps, you're agile. Yeah, you're fast. Because we're all talking to each other. And if you're agile, you have to do Scrum. Who doesn't like a 2-week planning session with about 20 different types of meetings, with a release on a Friday? Huh? Come on, we're doing Scrum. That's what the big three are telling us. We're hip again. That's what we're doing. So we're doing Scrum. We've got a release manager. Worst possible idea ever. We've got a release manager in the corner of the meeting room because there's the ping pong table over there. Yeah, we're releasing after 2 weeks. 3, 2, 1. And nothing's happening. There's that one DB is still there. It's ruling all of it. There's common, which nobody wants to touch because it's breaking everything. Engineers are still pushing security secrets into code, and new features are taking months because we skip one release cycle, so it has to come out on the other release cycle, but we still need to fix the bug. It's not hip. Our engineers are screaming at us. We don't know what's going on. We are not a hip company. Okay, so what now? I've told you a fictitious story. I'm sure nobody has ever heard of a company like this before or worked for a company like this before. I surely have never done that. And I've never felt that annoyance with hip management. But what do I do? Well, I don't want to be the old man shouting at the sky. I am an old man, but I don't want to be the old man shouting at the sky, even though I'm shouting. This is the only AI-generated image I have in my slide deck. What do we do? How can we move forward? Well, for starters, let's forget about buzzwords. Easier said than done. I've spent the last, how much? 10 minutes, thereabouts, shouting buzzwords at you. Microservices, DevOps, Scrum, Agile. And you're all thinking about buzzwords. If I tell you, don't think about the pink elephant, you're probably all thinking about the pink elephant, because I told you not to think about the pink elephant. So if I tell you not to think about buzzwords, you're going to be thinking about buzzwords. So there's a trick to this, and it usually comes from primary school teaching, because I find a lot of ways of dealing with kids in some way or another associates itself into the IT world. And one of that is associating your buzzword with something else. So if I tell you, don't think about the pink elephant, you associate it with a rainbow-colored macaw, because it's a beautiful bird. So you associate one with the other. So when I say, don't think about pink elephant, I'm relating it to rainbow-colored macaw. How does that associate itself with IT? So if I say microservices, you think the separation of software, modularity. Microservices, modularity. That's what we want to achieve. The 1960s programming paradigm of splitting your software into pieces. If I say DevOps, you think about communicating between the developers and the operations team to ensure... Okay, maybe that's a little bit too long. If I say DevOps, you think communication. Yeah? I'm gonna be that guy who tells you, you're gonna shout back at me communication. So I say DevOps, you say, okay, DevOps. Okay, one last time. DevOps. Okay, I'm gonna accept that one. So that's what we want to achieve. We don't want to achieve DevOps, we want to achieve communication between teams. Now, once we start forgetting about buzzwords, and there are a lot of them, I'm sure a few companies nowadays are implementing the one which starts with A and finishes with I. We want to ask questions. You want to be asking questions over and over again. Something hip, our fictitious company didn't really do. And you want to be asking what, why, and how. What do you want to implement? Why do you want to implement it? How do you want to implement it? What do you want to implement? What's the end goal here? What's my North Star? I want faster releases. That's my what. I want better communication between teams. So it's not buzzwordy. It's the end goal of what you want to achieve. And once you understand what, really think about it and ask, why do I want to achieve that? Why do I want to achieve faster releases? And this might seem obvious to everybody. But again, the fictitious company which came out of my head. I've seen that happen. Like, why do we want to achieve faster releases? Why do we want better communication? Do we want better communication? And that will help you answer the how. Once you start asking what, once you have an understanding of your what and your why, you will understand your how. Because your how will help you achieve your what and your why. It also, because nowadays, there are so many possibilities of how to do something, you want to pick the best choice for you. And your what and your why help you choose that. Also, those choices might be the fact that we'll try 2 or 3, different versions of those donuts. Although for me, I'd probably choose all of them. Okay, once you've asked those questions, you want to communicate. And communication means listening back, not just telling people. You want to understand, okay, are they receiving what I'm telling them? And also, is this the right thing? Keep on asking what, why, how, as you communicate it to everybody. Because that gives you a better picture. That gives you a better understanding of how to achieve your goal. And part of communication is documentation, which everybody hates. I've only ever met one engineer who loves documentation. And you couldn't stop him to talk. Maybe that's why he loved documentation so much. And I will one day create a talk for 30 minutes talking about documentation and how important it is and how to do it properly. Because documentation is extremely important. If it's not written down, it doesn't exist. So ensure you're documenting it. Because when you document as well, you're putting your ideas, your what, your why, your hows, into physical form. And then when other people read it, they'll either tell you, oh yeah, that's exactly what I thought, or go, oh wait, I understood you differently. It's a different way of communication. So ensure you document everything. Okay, you've documented. We're here now to implement. And you want to automate everything as much as possible. And I'm not talking about using AI. I'm talking about automating repeatable processes. Because automating repeatable processes reduces your cognitive load. If you want to know more about cognitive load, Chansu talked about team topologies. Highly suggest reading that. They talk about cognitive load and reducing your cognitive load as much as possible. I could go on all day about team topologies. I'm sure Chansu as well could do that. If you do want to know more about team topologies, come and talk to us. I'm not using team topologies as a buzzword here, not at all. But you want to automate everything because you want to reduce that cognitive load. Before I moved to the IT industry, I was an automotive engineer. And I helped design hybrid vehicles, the system integration of hybrid vehicles. And part of the job was having to test prototype vehicles. So these are multi-million-dollar vehicles. You have like 2 of them in the world because they're very early releases. And everybody wants to test on them. And you spend 5 minutes collecting millions of data points as much as possible. And the first time I did that, I was still a very young junior engineer. So this is eons ago. I went, yeah, I'm doing this, I'm collecting data. And I didn't realize that one of the wires had fallen from the sensors. But I kept on going. I spent half a day thinking I'm collecting data. And then when I left, I had to have that embarrassing phone call telling my manager, you know that very expensive car which I just borrowed, I kind of need to borrow it again. But before I did that, I automated the checks of the data collection. I automated the processing of the data collection after I collected it. Because then I was secure in my understanding that, yes, I have collected the right data, I have collected the proper data, enough data to analyze at a later stage. So automate everything. You want to automate your builds if you're using a container or a VM. Yes, you can still use VMs. They're extremely helpful. You don't have to use containers only or Kubernetes. And again, I know this might sound obvious to some of you, but if you ever worked in a big company where things are extremely slow going, automation is not the name of the game usually. So you want to automate your builds. You want to automate your container creation as much as possible. You also want to automate your deployments. Again, a repeatable process where you can automate over and over again. And we've done this now for a fair few years, so it should be fairly easy to do. At least you'd hope so. The difference is the how. As we said, multiple ways of how. It might be Argo CD, it might be Flux, it might be a simple script being triggered by a Git push. Every way is possible, and everything is good as long as you understand why you're doing it. Just because, Netflix and Spotify do it, or Amazon, or Red Hat, or whoever, doesn't mean you have to do it. If you're a 5-person team, don't look at the big people. They have very different priorities to you. And once you've automated everything, you want to monitor as much as possible. If you're not monitoring, it's the blind leading the clueless. It's completely chaotic. Monitor as much as you can. You might have some noise initially, but I'd rather you have more monitoring than less. How are you going to figure out what you're doing is correct? You want to monitor as much as possible. If there's one thing you take from this, is ensure you monitor. Okay, if there are 2 things you take from this, is monitoring and documentation. Okay, if there's 3 things you take from this, is monitoring, documentation, and forget buzzwords. Or take nothing. Don't listen to me. What do I know? You know what you want. I cannot tell you exactly. That's why I don't come up here and tell you to use Kubernetes. I don't come up here and tell you to use Argo CD. Both extremely amazing pieces of technology, but I don't know your situation. Ask your questions. Okay, once you're monitoring, you can then re-ask. Keep on asking throughout this whole process. What? Why? How? And finally, once you've monitored everything, everything's in production, don't panic. Because, unless you're on that toilet, do panic a bit. But don't panic. Things will go wrong. Stuff breaks. It happens. Everybody has different stress levels. I'm sure I panicked. If I start to panic, I forget my what, my why, my hows. Slow down, calm. Everything breaks every now and again. Ask AWS and Azure. Okay, so to reiterate, ask your questions. What, why, how? Once you've got the answer to those questions, and keep on answering those questions, communicate those questions. And as I said, communicating is a 2-way street. So listen. Then start automating stuff. Reduce your cognitive load by automating your tests, your builds, and your deployments. And once you're courageous enough to have everything out in production, monitor, build, alert. And as you monitor and alert, you have all that information coming in, and keep on asking those questions. I'm sure I've seen this diagram before somewhere. I'll come up with a buzzword for it. Okay, so as you do that, understand we're building, there are a lot of us who are building complex systems. One thing might slightly change another, and one breakage might fail the whole system. Understand what's going on. Go through that loop of asking, communicating, automating, monitoring. And if you do that, you also will be buzzword compliant. You also can become a dev, git, sec, infra, no, biz, AI ops person. The last time I gave this talk, somebody pointed out, oh, you forgot ML. Okay, well, the slide isn't big enough. Thanks. That's me. I don't have a QR code because I'm old school. And you shouldn't be randomly scanning QR codes. I'm sure there's a security person between us going, what are you doing? But connect with me if you want, or just talk to me. I'm Tim. I hope you enjoy that.